Well, good morning, good morning. Thank you so much for coming. Tomorrow's a big day, so I got ready. My socks from Sue Mahar got ready. You too. My dear mother, Mildred Cecilia O'Neill. Hey. I'm really honored to be back with you, and I thank Rob for his kind invitation. I welcome everybody online, especially our dear sisters at the Mother House, and I promise you I will remember to repeat the questions. And we have a mic available on each side, so let's try to keep in mind our folks that are somewhere else. And I thank you, Jeff, and I thank Bob Goldbach for getting a lot of this ready. And Kathy, you are the steady one there in that crowd. So for Lent, I have to tell you, I really struggled with this topic, and I picked it a long time ago. And I hope what I picked is okay, and if it's not, don't tell me. The theme I want to deal with is Lent. Okay, honey, in case the Pope calls. Yeah. Lent, like life, often gives us what I'm calling death and resurrection experiences, small d, small r. By that I mean death, I mean a painful experience. Death itself is a painful experience. And when I use the term resurrection, I see it not only as an event in the life of Jesus, but an event of new life in our small worlds. Last year, we focused on the 7 last words of Jesus. This year, God willing, we will, with the use of some of the Lenten Gospels and our own experience, make the point I want to make, that there is a deep connection in our lives between death experiences and resurrection. And my sense is, hi Bob, my sense is that the resurrection experiences often elude us because of the sorrow around our Lenten experiences. This is Bob Pizzatello. I had him in class years ago. He was 10 at the time. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But he is the man that when my computer goes crazy, because I'm crazy, I dial him up and he'll say, now, did you press this button? 9 times out of 10, I'm wrong, but he's right, and I'm so grateful to him. So I'm going to try to make this connection between the pain in our life and the resurrection experiences in our life. And I'll be here today, thank you, Jesus, next week, the 29th, and we're skipping a week because there's something going on here at church. I don't know if it's a wedding or a funeral or something, and we'll be back April 12th. The texts we're going to be using are the temptations of Jesus, and you heard them last weekend when you were here. Then I'm going to move next week to the Transfiguration, then the parable of the prodigal son, and then finally the woman caught in adultery. So I'll focus on those 4. So here we go. The liturgical year is held together by 2 huge events, Christmas and Easter. And each one of these events is preceded by a season of preparation, Advent and Lent. And these seasons are held together by a green bridge of ordinary time, when the priest and the deacon in the church all has green. So it's a lovely picture of two huge pillars connected by this green wreath, so to speak. I want to talk for a moment with you, and hopefully you'll talk with me about it. Historical events around Lent. It was observed in the early church, and it became locked into place in the year 325 at the Council of Nicaea. And it became a season to deal with. Now, views differ among Christians, even to this day, about what to do during Lent. And throughout the history of our Roman Church, divisions were created around the issue of faith and works. And the Roman Church got trapped into works. You do this much, you get an indulgence, you slip into heaven. Remember? Or watch out for purgatory, a hot ticket. Faith and works. And faith and works was one of the issues that brought the great split between Roman Catholics and Lutherans and other Protestants. You know that. But I think the issue of faith and works remains with us on some levels. I remember my dear mother saying during Lent in her household, an Irish household, they weighed their food to make sure that the meals were not too big. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of that before. Okay. And you know, remember what it was like to abstain from anything after midnight to go to communion. And if you were at a dance or a party, I mean, not even water. It was hard. It was hard. Food was weighed, fasting was encouraged. And I wonder if any of you here have memories of those kinds of experiences of Lent. Hold on, Ruthie. This is an interesting one.
Yeah, I remember you could go to Buffalo because the Diocese of Buffalo gave you, you could have a dispensation. So if, you were going out or something, you could go to Buffalo, and you were in the Buffalo Diocese. I mean, I don't know if that counted if you were, a member of the Diocese of Rochester, but you were in the Diocese of Buffalo, so you had this dispensation.
That's right. Anybody else, some interesting experiences of Lent? Hold here, you got the...
This isn't actually Lent, but it meets it.
Watch out now, she's getting ready.
Yeah, I went to summer camp. I went to summer camp, and it was my birthday, and I was invited to a friend's house that I met at camp. And the mother had made a big turkey for us for this big celebration. And I said, I can't eat that turkey because it was Lent. And so the mother said, well, I'll take care of that for you. I said, okay, whatever that means. And the next thing I know, she's on the phone talking to the bishop, asking him if I could eat the turkey on my birthday in Lent. And I never heard how it turned out, but I had my turkey dinner. don't quite see James Carney going for that, so I don't know who might have.
Okay, so it's anybody else Lenten experiences? Oh, here's a problem right here. Yeah, listen, this is, Liz.
I'll share it anyway. I remember my mom taught at Mercy High School, and they had a fundraiser during Lent, and it was a spaghetti dinner. And the bishop granted a dispensation so you could eat the meatballs. And I was pretty young, and I remember thinking, well, this makes no sense. It just caused me to think, this whole thing is kind of a farce if you can show up and eat the meatball because the bishop says okay, but otherwise, every other Friday you've got to eat tuna fish.
You were ahead of your time.
Well,
It's just, and then for those of us that were particularly careful, you worried. And so what I'm saying is, as far as Lent is concerned, the Roman Church got itself off in a direction that needed more balance. Let me put it that way. And now, it just is freer. It feels freer. But for people who were a bit scrupulous, it was difficult. Is there when I speak about a Lenten experience, what might they be in our lives?
This is real short. Thank you. But important. I really did not like the covering of the statues during Lent. It bothered me. And I went home and had nightmares about it. But that was something we did.
That's right. That was something that covered the statues. That was something we did. Giving up candy. Oh my God, giving up candy. And when milk duds. And when Good Friday and Holy Saturday came, we couldn't wait for it to end. But there are other Lenten experiences. I visited one of our sisters yesterday, Thursday, 101. She's as with it as can be. But I know she's not going to be with us long. And for me, that will be a Lenten experience, that she will go home to God. There are disappointments in life. And you could call them Lenten experiences. There are fractured relationships in life. And you could call them Lenten experiences. The death of someone you love, the abuse of power. And we have experienced throughout our lives, I'm 91, and I can recall, I don't think I ever got over my mother's death when she was 59. I think I've been looking for a mother ever since, to be honest with you. Wasn't that way with my dad, but with my mother. And of course, we remember, as we did last year, the remembrance of Jesus' sufferings. Have you ever experienced what you might call a Lenten experience in your life? Two bishops took me out of the pulpit. Lenten experience, one worse than the other. Harder, I mean. Anything else?
Yes, leaving St. Catherine's.
Leaving St. Catherine's was a Lenten experience.
I mean, I really haven't left, but.
All right. Some of us are experiencing our nation going through a Lenten experience right now. Not everyone, but some of us, particularly if you are a migrant or you received U.S. aid, and you could go down a list. For many of us, we're going through a political Lent. Some of us have had personal illnesses. Some of us have experienced a change at work, maybe disappointments about family, and a fracture in a family, mistakes we've made, our inability sometimes to help another person who needs it. And some of us can also recall resurrection experiences, something that gave us new life. I'll share with you one of mine, and maybe you'll share one of yours. Sisters of Mercy, 20, 25, I can't remember, 30 years ago, I was only 3 at the time, had brought in 2 retreat people who were going to deal with the question of reconciliation. So we're all in the chapel, and at first, before that, I thought this will be great, and I offered to the planners, I'd be happy to preach, and they said, great. And I thought, gee, that's nice. My family said yes. And then the word came, the retreat people wanted to do it themselves. So I sat in the back pew, and I was so mad and sad at the same time. And the retreat was quite dramatic. The retreat person said, if there's anybody here in the chapel that you have a disagreement with, I want you to get up and go over to them and settle it. And some people did, and it was dramatic to see them get up and go over to Sister KKK and say, you know, we didn't get along and I'm sorry. It was dramatic. I'm in the back sitting just as angry as I can get, sitting, and I felt an arm around my shoulder. And I heard the words, I am so sorry. And it was Matthew Clark. I can't tell you what that meant to me. And that he was on his knee because I was seated. The fact that he would do that because he didn't have much choice. And he tried to find ways to keep it going. But for him to do that was one of the most resurrection experiences I've ever had. And you can't remember it. You can't forget it, I mean. You just can't forget it. Anything else that you can remember as a resurrection experience? Grandchildren. What a gift. New life. Anything else? Okay. I just want to raise that for you because perhaps sometimes the pain we go through may be so heavy that we don't see the new life for a while. But in time, new understandings can come and help us if we're open. And my sense is we have not given those moments the attention and the thanks and the awareness they deserve. So hopefully when we look at some of the weekly Gospels over this period, we will see Lenten and resurrection experiences play out, and maybe that will help us be more aware of them in our own lives. So for this first week, we're going to read the temptations that you heard last week, but I want to share some new insights with you. So I'm going to read the gospel, and you will remember it very clearly. This is from Luke 4. And Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, returned from the Jordan and was led by the Spirit for 40 days in the wilderness, tempted by the devil. And he ate nothing in those days, and when they were ended, he was hungry. The devil said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command this stone to become bread." And Jesus answered him, saying, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone." And the devil took him up and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time, and said to him, "To you I will give all this authority and their glory, for it has been delivered to me, and I can give it to whoever I will. If you then will worship me, it will all be yours." And Jesus answered, "It's written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve." And then the devil took him to Jerusalem and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down from here, for it is written, God will give you his angels charge of you to guard you, and on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against the stone." And Jesus answered, "You shall not tempt the Lord your God." And the devil had ended every temptation and departed from him. You remember that? You remember that reading, the gospel? Any insights about it? Well, I want to share with you what the Gospel of Luke, from Luke, Dennis McBride, Father Dennis McBride, writes about the desert. Jesus is led by the Spirit in the desert, and traditionally the desert has been seen as the land which was not blessed by God. I never knew that. It was the place where the jackals roamed and the demons wandered. It was the land where there was no security, no sure exit, a land totally innocent of comfort and consolation. It was a place of trial, a place where the heart of a man was quickly revealed to himself. The desert was still the place where a person can be utterly alone, where he has nowhere to hide and no shadow lands to comfort him. It is the place where even the sun becomes the enemy. Where it is too hot in the day, too cold at night, it is the void. It is the place where Jesus comes face to face with his enemy. It is the place where Jesus comes face to face with himself. That's a powerful statement. Dennis McBride presents something that set me back a bit I had never thought of. If Jesus had responded to his 3 requests, he would have emphasized his divinity. Turn this rock into stone, I'll get all these kingdoms, I will be. In other words, he would become, in the mind of many, the divine one in charge of religion, in charge of the state, and in charge of economics, bread, the temple, and so forth. But he said no. And what McBride is saying is that Jesus, at this moment in his career, is coming to terms with his own humanity. He's not going to give in and claim divinity. He's coming to terms with his own humanity.
Is it affirming
Is it affirming
for Jesus?
that he's done that?
Yes, he's accomplished that goal.
Well, it could be, because you see, I have a sense I have a sense that there could have been a struggle within him, that he was living as a human being, and maybe an embryonic, gradual realization of his divinity. And the devil was saying to him, choose divinity. You'll be the Messiah in a minute. And he's saying, no, I am a human, frail person. And I understand what people go through. I had never thought about that. He clarifies who he's called to be, not just divine, but totally human. It was a grace that was offered to him in the midst of his weakness, that he claimed his true humanity. Imagine if he changed that stone into bread, if you're the Son of God, he would have had all the economic power in the world.
Instead of Donald.
Behave now. He would have had all the power in the world. And he drew on the scriptures to assist himself. But I had never felt about, or understood or even realized the internal struggle that he had to go through as he gradually recognized who he was. Some people think from the moment he was born, he came out of the womb divine. Well, he did. But how could he know that? And how wonderful that the one with whom we've cast our lot has blessed humanity this way. That he avoided the grab for power and title and said, I'm just one like the many people I'm serving. And I think that is a grace that is offered to all of us. Now, the experience, I wonder with whom he shared it, because he must have in an oral tradition, because Matthew, Mark, and Luke all record it. How can we find the resurrection moments in this time of trial for him? What thinkest thou?
Maybe outcomes? Maybe outcomes?
Maybe outcomes. Certainly the Christian church would be very different if his divinity was recognized right then, or if he recognized it. He wouldn't have gone through the crucifixion. Is there anything else here that this event probably helped him with other temptations? Because he was terribly vulnerable. The climate, the hunger, the isolation, and we have all been there. And what did he draw upon that made him come to the conclusion to say to the devil, I'm not going to follow what you said? What did he draw upon to help him during that time? The scriptures.
Yeah, not experience.
Yeah. And it's really, I think it's probably an event that he recalled during his ministry when times get difficult, that he received that strength. What do you think, Bob? I know you're thinking.
I have a thought.
Here. Always put his glasses on. This is serious.
So your question about
sort of what can we draw into this moment of lots of challenges. I was having a conversation with a close friend who was not a religious person at all, and he was challenging the age-old question, why do terrible things happen? If there were a God, how can all these things happen? And in the moment, I said to him, first of all, I don't have that answer. But what I have seen in my life is that when difficult circumstances present themselves, people often look inside and find strength to do what needs to be done. And if the difficult circumstances had not presented themselves, then maybe they would not have searched themselves and decided what was important and done what needs to be done. So I see this time, this sort of Lenten experience, particularly for those who are being marginalized in our society, in our country, as a moment when we, those of us who are not comfortable with that, need to find a way to stand up and to support those who are being marginalized. And that could be, in some grand scheme, some small positive outcome, to use your term, ma'am, of what circumstances like this can bring forth in people.
That's a good comment. Any other comments here? What are you thinking there, Mr. Portland? I know you're thinking. They see he reached for the mic. He's with us.
I've always struggled with that question of Jesus' divinity during his public life. And I think this story is probably the most compelling of all of his experiences until his crucifixion, which is an incredible finale to this wonderful mystery that we struggle with, but it becomes the cornerstone of our faith.
Right. And the resurrection confirms the divinity. And the devil wanted him to confirm it in his early ministry. Yeah. Anybody else? Anything that strikes you personally? Well, now I have another question. How do you and I bridge the two events in our lives? Our experiences of death with a small d and our resurrection experiences, because we all have them. I could never, after Matthew Clark engaged in that resurrection experience, I could never say anything nasty about him.
I was going to ask you that.
How could you, when he was as much a victim as I was?
Did you ever allude to it?
To him?
Yeah.
I can't even quite remember if I did, but I kept in touch with him, and I wrote him a lot when he was ill, and I think he knew. But you're never the same. But sometimes we cannot move from a death experience to a resurrection experience. Why do you think that happens?
Ego.
Put that microphone up.
Ego.
Well, tell me what you mean.
I mean that we think we're too good to make that kind of a determination. That if somebody says they're sorry, well, that's fine. Let's just move on. No, there's more to it. It's called reconciliation for a reason. You have to figure those things out.
Thank you. That's excellent. Liz, did you want to say something, honey? Oh, God, I thought your hand was up. Why? What, dear?
I
Do you want to share what's bubbling in your mind? Oh, okay, okay. How do we bridge the two events, the Lenten experiences in our life and the resurrection experiences that are there? Why can't some people do it? You had one theory. What do you think, James?
I'm not really sure. That's a great question. To take me a while to think about that one, I think.
Yep, yep. Yes, there's a beautiful hand up.
I think you have to look for the lesson learned. So I think everything's meant to be. It's part of God's plan. And sometimes you think it should be going one way, but God surprises you all the time with a different way for it to go. And so I think you have to look at those moments and understand, what our purpose truly is here on earth. We're weak, so we think, with weak minds. And when you think of the bigger picture and where we're ultimately meant to be, you have to look at those lessons, and that's why. So that's how you can bridge the two.
That's a very positive approach. Some of us I had to go into counseling after I was removed from the pulpit. I couldn't on my own make that bridge happen.
Are you really serious about that?
I did.
Good for you.
Well, it was one of our sisters, God rest her soul, Pat McDonald. She was the best in the West. And I remember one time Charlie Mulligan, loved Charles, he came to the door one time when I lived in the 19th Ward, and he sensed something. And he said to me, "You need some help." And she made all the difference in the world for me, that I could put it in perspective. And I think sometimes the death experience is so overwhelming that we need an outside voice or an outside help to bridge that pain.
I'm not sure I get what the death experience is.
She's not sure what I mean by a death experience. The loss of a child. The loss of a child. The loss of a dream, a profession that you love. The death of someone, physical death, can be a death experience. The breakdown of communication in a marriage is a death experience. And sometimes we can make those bridges, we can get over those bridges, but sometimes we need some help to see what the death experience is doing to us and how we can find new life.
So 2 words you could use to describe it. I'm sorry, Jack. Painful,
Yes,
life-changing.
yes,
Maybe you're not going to recover from this.
yes. Painful experiences, you've all had them.
Stop.
And this was not an easy experience for Jesus in the desert. But he knew it was something he had to do as he was launching his ministry, to get away and think things through. It was painful. Here comes another one, Jeff. Oh, there you go, honey.
Sorry, I'll just give you a quick example. So my very close friend in high school, her brother passed away. They were an Indian family, and when he passed away, he was very young. He was a teenager, and they donated all of his organs. And through that experience, they realized how many people could see and how many people they could help from donating his organs, that they started an organization in India that now provides health care for so many individuals. So if they didn't experience that loss, they wouldn't have been able to help so many people there. So just an example of the loss and how much they've been helping so many people as a result.
Thank you.
Yeah, those are great.
That's a loss and new life. And yes, here comes a good one. Watch out.
Because No, I wasn't the friend he was talking about. No, I think, you know, faith is what gives you the transition. Okay? And I think I struggle to maintain faith. I've never been an outwardly religious person. I went through all Catholic schools, and I heard both ends of the equation. Ended up with Jesuits. I started out with Dominican nuns. And so, you know, I got through all the thou shalt nots and all that stuff that made life difficult. But I think at the end of the day, I feel really, really sorry for people who have no faith, who are agnostic or atheists, because I think without faith, there are so many things that, you know, you call it a death experience, but stuff happens.
Yep.
It happens to everyone. It may be something that seems minor to somebody else, but it's major to you. It doesn't matter what it is. And in order to keep going, you have to have faith. And maybe for some people, the faith can be, you know, just other experiences in their own life or somebody else's life who has gotten back up after difficulty. But I think it's much more difficult if you don't have faith in God, because I really fixate on the control word, because what we all want is control.
Yeah.
And, you know, sooner or later you figure out you don't have control.
You don't have control.
And so faith is the only thing that gets you through. I don't know how you get through without having that somewhere.
That's interesting, and I think that is critical for many people. You brought to mind something. I was working for Congresswoman Slaughter, and thanks to Matthew Clark, when I was offered the job, the president of our community called him. Remember Ann Miller? Yeah, called him and said, now, Barbara has been offered a job by Louise, women's health, children's health, disabilities. How do you feel about that? He could have said, oh, no, she can't do it, and I wouldn't have done it. The only thing he said was, stay clear of the abortion issue. But for some people, that wasn't enough. I remember I was doing a Lenten talk at Our Lady of Lourdes, and a very conservative judge wrote me a letter and said, you have stained your vestments. I didn't know I had them. You have stained your vestments by working for her. And the priest said, shall we cancel? I said, no, really, no. Because in many ways, she was difficult to work for, but the issues she supported were significant. And some you agree with and some you don't. But Matthew, in retrospect now, provided me with many resurrection experiences, to his credit. Yeah. Do you think there's any other reason why some people can't bridge the resurrection experiences and the death experiences? Yes, Liz.
So when Sue mentioned ego earlier, I thought she was saying evil. And I do think from a broader perspective, it is the devil who prevents you from forgiving and healing and having a kinder outlook on people and life and experiences.
Yeah. And what you see in your courtroom is very different from what we see. And you have to find ways to handle that when you look.
But it is and it isn't. I mean, it's life. It's human beings. It's people making poor decisions and acting in ways that are not good. And that happens in all aspects of society.
Yeah, yeah. And we also have to leave room for a process to unfold. It took me a long time to really like Matthew. And that like grew to love and respect. And so we can't rush a thing to say, oh, you got to forget it and get over it. No, it takes time. What are you thinking, Sue? Here you go, honey.
I don't know if you talked about this while I was gone or not, but a death experience, I think, for me, because of my children, was the priestly abuse scandal that came out. I had a son that was preaching at one of the local churches for the children's liturgy. When you were pulled out, he was pulled out also. And it didn't sit well with him at all. And soon after that, the scandal came. And it was a death experience to my kids who have not gotten over it. And I don't know, I hope they will find the resurrection. I mean, my death experience is that my children turn their face away from the church.
Yep. And
So
that,
my resurrection will come, hopefully someday.
and we can't deny the fact that your children do wonderful things for other people,
Yes.
that they're still doing good works, but there's a block there for them. And that's very understandable. But that's painful for you to watch because the church means so much to you that you want it to mean that much to those you love. Yep. And I think it took me a long time. I don't think I've ever gotten over my mother's death, how it happened, and it was so raw, and it was so, I was the only one with her, and she was bleeding all over the place, and I never quite got over it. And and sometimes it's always there, but the resurrection experiences help you walk through it. And I think we face them every day. And today, the strength of Jesus, I don't know if he thought, I think we forget he was totally human. I don't know if he thought, well, gosh, this would be an easy way for them to accept me. And that had to be hard. We forget the humanity of the man. So, what do you think? Do you think this is a good process to use?
I just want to say something.
What do you want to say, darling? Is that Rob?
Yes.
The mask is off. Here he comes. Stand back.
I'm apologetic that sometimes I'm probably not more vocal as I should be in what I think and believe. I think we are in a horrendous time. Sue mentioned about her young people and the sexual abuse. Certainly that's very important to be addressed and continues. I think, and this is me, I think we're in a terrible time in this nation of our country. We are in a horrible, horrible situation. I was in conversation with one of my friends, and she shared with me that her parents said, well, you're too sensitive. How can we be too sensitive about the life and value of every human person? In this nation, yeah, make us great. I am so disheartened. And I feel conflicted because God forbid you might give reference to something that ties into church and politics. I'm a firm believer Jesus was very political. Tell me where he wasn't political and when he shared in the message of the gospel. Yeah? I don't believe. So if any of you are interested, I belong to a group called the Association of United States Catholic Priests. And an individual, his name is Dennis Metzger, he is from Minnesota, wrote to his bishop a letter. And it had a big impact on me. And I give him credit. And sometimes I feel, Rob, you should be more vocal. You know, I've been in situations in both parishes. Ugh, God forbid they talk about migration or anything else. That's too political. Sorry. These are our sisters and brothers. Mm-hmm. And we have a real situation, I believe. Mm-hmm. I mean, can we talk among one another? I have friends, since the election, we've never said a thing about anything. Can we talk civilly and be respectful? So many of you are interested, and I'd be happy to forward this to you if I don't have your email, but it's from the Association of the United States Catholic Priests, and it's from Dennis Metzger to his bishop, Daniel Thomas of Toledo. And it's long, but this next weekend's gospel talks about pruning around the tree and giving another chance to be fruitful. Do we not want to be fruitful in the gospel of one another? So I'm just passing it along. And I apologize if I've not been a voice as I should have been in the past.
Well, Rob, you sent me that letter, and it's powerful. It's powerful and courageous. And for him and for me, in a public place, you're in a tough position because you want to respect the opinion of other people. But there are some points where you just can't be quiet when people are suffering. Yeah. And I think that got Jesus in trouble. Yeah. Remember when he healed the blind man, they said, well, who sinned, himself or his parents? And he said, neither. His life was not an easy one because he was balancing terrible death experiences of his own, and yet he would see what would happen when he did such beautiful things for other people. Yeah.
I would like to follow up with what Father Rob has said. I am personally, and many people I know, are going through a death experience right now because of what is happening in our country. Mm-hmm. You turn on the news and there's one thing after the next where people are being hurt and are suffering. And we cannot stand by and watch this happen. I just spent a day with 3 women from Afghanistan who had to flee to Pakistan, were kicked out of Pakistan. Fortunately, were able to get to a refugee camp in Qatar. Through the help of Keeping Our Promise, a local organization here in Rochester, they were brought to Rochester. and they are being helped now. One was, she said, I'm like a veterinarian, but because I wasn't a man, I could not go to school. The other two women are teachers. They are here all by themselves. They have been given housing, and I'm sure Saint's Place that is associated with St. Louis and St. John of Rochester have helped them with housing. But there are just so many people that are hurting because they don't know what to do now. And I just share, I think that is a death experience.
Yeah, they are death experiences. And it's good to name them in our life and to see what we can do to bring resurrection to others. Because people have brought it to us. People have brought it to us. Rob Borsey has brought me resurrection time and time again by giving me this opportunity, or to preach on a day when I can. You can't thank somebody enough for that. So anyway, that's what I came up with the gospel for this past Sunday. Are you going to let me loose for another one? I am very grateful to you, and Rob, thank you again for your hospitality. And thank you folks for coming, and we'll see you next week.